3 Smartwatch horror stories. Hey everybody, I'm glad y'all stopped by. Most of us wear technology without really thinking about what it's doing. A smartwatch counts your steps, tracks your sleep, checks your heart rate. It can even tell when you've fallen, and after a while, you start trusting it. But what happens when your watch starts tracking something you didn't do, or detecting something that shouldn't be there? Tonight I've got 3 stories about people whose smartwatches started telling them things they probably would have been better off never knowing. Whether these stories are true, I'll let y'all decide. Story 1. You've reached your goal. This happened to me in 2024. I was 36 years old and weighed 255 pounds. There's no nice way to put it. I'd let myself go. I worked from home for a call center, so most days I barely had a reason to get out of my chair. I'd log in around 8 in the morning, put on my headset, take calls all day. Then when my shift ended, I'd take off one headset and put on another one, because I loved video games. And when I say loved them, I mean I could lose an entire evening without even realizing it. I'd tell myself one more game, then another, then another. Next thing I knew, it was midnight. My food delivery was sitting beside me, and according to my smartwatch, I'd walked about as far as an elderly turtle. My doctor had been telling me for a while that I needed to lose some weight. So finally, I made myself a goal: 255 pounds to 220. 6 months, 35 pounds. I figured that was realistic. I bought a smartwatch and set my daily goal to 10,000 steps, and for about 3 days, I was the healthiest man alive. I'd walk before work, walk during lunch, walk after dinner. Then, a new video game came out. That was pretty much the end of my new lifestyle. Except I refused to give up on the 10,000 steps. So I'd spend the entire day sitting down. Then around 11 at night, I'd look at my watch. 4,218 steps. Holy poo-poo. And there I'd go, walking around my neighborhood at midnight, trying to make up for everything I should have done earlier. Sometimes, I'd still be walking at 2 in the morning. That's how I met him. It was a Tuesday night, or technically, Wednesday morning. A little after 2 a.m., I'd spent almost 5 hours gaming after work. When I finally checked my watch, I wasn't even at 6,000 steps. I remember staring at it thinking, why do I keep doing this to myself? But I put on my shoes, grabbed my earbuds, and went outside. I lived in a pretty quiet neighborhood, mostly one-story houses, small yards, streetlights every few houses. Nobody was outside. I had music playing in my earbuds while I walked laps around the block. I needed about 4,000 steps. I was probably halfway through when I noticed somebody standing ahead of me. An older man. He was near the sidewalk underneath one of the streetlights. At first, I assumed he was walking too. Then I got closer. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there. He looked old. Really old. Tall and painfully thin. His skin was pale. His clothes were strange too, not like some costume, just old-fashioned. Dark pants pulled higher than people wear them now. Long-sleeve shirt buttoned all the way up, suspenders, and an old pair of dark shoes. I gave him the little head nod you give somebody when you don't actually want to talk. Then I kept walking. As I passed him, his mouth moved. I couldn't hear him because of my earbuds. I stopped, pulled one out. Sorry? He looked at me. What are you doing out so late? His voice was soft. I laughed. Trying to get my steps. He looked confused. Your steps. I held up my wrist, my watch. He stared at it. It counts how much I walk. He looked at the watch, then back at me. Why? I laughed again. Because I'm trying to lose weight. He looked me up and down. And I remember thinking, okay, buddy, you don't have to inspect the merchandise. Then he asked, how much do you weigh? Now, normally, if a stranger asked me that at 2 in the morning, I'd probably keep walking. But there was something about this guy. He didn't seem threatening, just odd. 255. And what do you wish to weigh? 220. He nodded slowly. How long have you given yourself? 6 months. He thought about that. Then asked, and walking at 2 a.m. is how you intend to accomplish this? I laughed. Well, I'm trying. Why didn't you walk earlier? That one got me. I pointed toward my house. Video games. He didn't know what I meant, or at least, his face made it look like he didn't. So I explained. I play games on my computer. I get distracted. Next thing I know, it's midnight and I haven't moved all day. He stared at me for several seconds, then said, You must turn off the video games. I smiled. Yeah, probably. No. His voice changed. Not louder, just firmer. You must turn off the video games and apply yourself if you wish to achieve your goal. I remember thinking, I came outside to get steps, not a lecture from the ghost of fitness past. I laughed. I'll work on it. He didn't laugh. Then he looked past me, toward my house. I hadn't told him which one was mine. That didn't register with me until later. He pointed. You have a light beside your front door. Yeah. Keep your porch light burning when you need my help. I stared at him. My porch light? He nodded. If you need help reaching your goal, keep it burning. I didn't know what to say, so I gave him the same answer you give somebody when you want to end a strange conversation. Okay, he smiled. I'll help you reach your goal. I put my earbud back in. Have a good night. I walked away. Maybe 30 seconds later, I looked back. The streetlight was still there. Empty sidewalk, no old man. I stopped. Looked between the houses. Nothing. There was nowhere he could have gone that quickly. I remember thinking, that was weird. Then my watch vibrated. I looked down. 10,000 steps. Goal achieved. I smiled. I'd done it. And by the time I got home, I'd already convinced myself the old man had simply walked into somebody's yard. I went inside, took a shower, and went to bed. For the next few days, nothing happened, and more importantly, I didn't listen to a single thing that old man told me. Thursday night, video games. Friday, video games. Saturday, I ordered a pizza and played until almost 3 a.m. Sunday night was even worse. At 11:48 p.m., I finally looked at my watch. 4,216 steps. I groaned. There was no way I was walking almost 6,000 steps before midnight. Then, I remembered the old man. Keep your porch light burning when you need my help. I actually laughed. It sounded even more ridiculous several days later. But I got up anyway. Walked to the front window. My porch light was off. I flipped the switch. The light came on. I looked outside, empty porch, empty sidewalk. Nothing. Okay, old man. I laughed. Help away. Then I went back upstairs, put my headset on, and kept gaming. About an hour and a half later, my watch vibrated. I didn't even look at it immediately. I was in the middle of a game. Then it vibrated again. I finally glanced down. Goal achieved. I stopped playing, looked closer. 10,003 steps. I stared at the screen, then at my legs. I'd been sitting in that chair for almost 2 hours. I opened my activity history. At 11:48, 4,216 steps. Then shortly after midnight, the number had started climbing, 4400. The number had started climbing. Until finally, 10,003. I stood up, walked downstairs. The porch light was still burning. I opened the front door. Nobody there. I stepped onto the porch, looked down both sides of the street. Nothing. I almost turned the light off. Then I thought, no way. There was an easy explanation. The watch glitched. That's all. So I turned the porch light off, went upstairs, and forgot about it, at least until Tuesday. Because Tuesday night, I decided to try something. I spent the entire evening gaming, didn't walk, didn't exercise, didn't even pretend I was going to. At midnight, my watch showed 3,982 steps. I walked downstairs, turned on the porch light. Then I went back to my computer. I didn't take another step. The next morning, I woke up, looked at my watch, and smiled. 10,001 steps. That's when I stopped thinking something was wrong with my watch and started thinking I'd found myself a cheat code. And looking back, that's probably where I made my biggest mistake. I wasn't scared. I wasn't even that interested in figuring out how it was happening. I was happy. My watch said I was hitting 10,000 steps every day, and I wasn't doing any of the work. For the next week, I tested it. If I left the porch light off, nothing. I'd wake up with whatever number of steps I'd actually taken. 5200, 4800. One day, a pathetic 3,600, but if I turned that porch light on before I went to bed, or before I started gaming, something changed. 10,000. Every time. It didn't matter how far away I was. One night I stopped at 9,721, porch light on, morning. 10,002. Another night, 6,430, porch light on, morning. 10,004. Then I deliberately tested it. I worked from home all day. Ordered lunch. Ordered dinner. Didn't exercise. After work, I played video games for almost 7 hours. At midnight, 2,811 steps. I laughed. Good luck with that one. I went downstairs, turned on the porch light, and went back to gaming. Next morning, 10,006. I couldn't explain it. But here's the part that should have scared me. The watch wasn't just adding steps. My activity calories were increasing too. My exercise minutes were increasing. Some nights, it showed that I'd been walking for more than an hour. And according to the watch, all of it happened while I was sitting upstairs playing video games. I told myself the watch was glitching. Maybe the movement from the controller was confusing it. Maybe my internet connection was doing something weird. I came up with every stupid explanation I could think of, because I liked what was happening. And then, I stepped on the scale. 249 pounds. I'd lost 6 pounds. I remember staring at the number. Holy poo-poo. That got my attention. I'd been trying to lose weight for weeks before meeting the old man. Barely anything. Now suddenly, 6 pounds. I started weighing myself every morning. 248. A few days later, 246. Then, 244. My clothes were getting looser. My face looked thinner. People noticed. During one of our video meetings at work, my supervisor said, "Man, what are you doing?" "What?" "You're losing weight." I smiled. "Walking." Technically, I wasn't sure that was a lie. Someone was apparently walking. I just didn't know who. The whole thing made me even lazier. That's the embarrassing part. Instead of thinking, this is working, I should start taking care of myself. I thought, why bother? I'd finish work, order food, turn on the porch light, then game until 2 in the morning, sometimes 3, and every morning, goal achieved. I stopped going on my late-night walks entirely. Why would I? The old man had promised to help me, and apparently, he was. Then one night, something happened that made the whole thing feel different. It was around 3:15 in the morning. I'd been gaming for hours. My porch light had been on since around 11. I needed to use the bathroom. I paused my game, walked down the hallway, and went inside. I was half asleep. Didn't even turn on the main light. There was a little night light plugged into the wall that gave me enough light to see. While I was standing there, my watch vibrated. I looked down. 8,742 steps. I remember thinking, okay, still working. Then, 8,743. I stopped. 8,744. I stared at my wrist. 8,745. I wasn't moving. Come on. 8,746. I held my arm completely still. Another step, then another, and another. The numbers were increasing, while I stood perfectly still. For the first time, I didn't think it was funny. I finished using the bathroom, walked to the sink, and washed my hands. I looked into the mirror. Nothing, just me. and I barely recognized myself. I'd already lost close to 20 pounds. I leaned down, splashed some cold water on my face, then stood back up. There was a face in the mirror, right behind my shoulder. The old man. I screamed and spun around. Nobody. Empty bathroom. I backed against the sink, looked toward the shower, behind the door. Nothing. I slowly turned toward the mirror again. He was gone. My watch vibrated. 9,106 steps. Nope. I walked out of that bathroom as fast as I could. I headed toward my gaming room. Then stopped at the top of the stairs. From there, I could see part of the front yard through the window beside the door. The porch light was burning, and standing directly underneath it was the old man. Same clothes, same suspenders, same pale face. He was looking up toward me. I froze. He smiled. Not a mean smile, not threatening. He looked proud, like a coach watching somebody cross a finish line. I stepped away from the window. My watch vibrated. 9,587 steps. Then again. 9,721. The numbers were climbing faster. I went downstairs. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to turn the light off. Maybe I wanted to make sure he was really there. I reached the front door and looked through the glass. Nobody. The porch was empty. I flipped the switch. The light went out. My watch stopped. 9,844 steps. I stared at it. Nothing happened. 9,844. Still. For almost 5 minutes. The number didn't change. I flipped the porch light back on. My watch vibrated almost immediately. 9,901. Nope. I turned it off again. The steps stopped. That's when I finally understood. The porch light wasn't some symbol. It wasn't just something the old man had told me to do. It was permission. When that light was burning, I was asking him to help. I left it off, went upstairs, shut down my computer, and for the first time in months, I went to bed without reaching my goal. The next morning, my watch still showed 9,844 steps. I was relieved. I told myself I was finished with all of it. No more porch light, no more cheat code. If I wanted 10,000 steps, I'd walk them myself. And for about 2 weeks, that's exactly what I did. I started walking after work. I limited my gaming. I cooked a few meals instead of ordering everything. And honestly, I felt good. The old man had been right about one thing. I needed to apply myself. My weight continued dropping. But normally now, 238, 234, 230. I was getting close. And once I got that close, I became determined. I wanted to reach 220 without his help. 6 months after I'd started, I stepped onto the scale. 220 pounds. I just stared at it. Then I started laughing. I'd done it. I took a picture, sent it to a couple friends. I even posted it online. 35 pounds gone. I looked at my watch. A notification appeared. Goal achieved. That felt good. For once, I'd actually earned it. That evening, I played video games. I figured I'd earned that too. Around midnight, I shut everything down, walked downstairs, checked the front door. Porch light? Off. I smiled. I hadn't turned that thing on at night in months. Whatever happened before, it was over. I went to bed at 2 a.m. Sheesh vibrated. I opened my eyes, looked at the screen. At first, I thought I was still dreaming. It said, "New goal set." Underneath it, on 185 pounds, I sat straight up. What? I started tapping through the settings. I hadn't changed anything. My weight goal was still supposed to be 220. I tried to delete the new goal. The screen froze, then went black. From downstairs, I heard a click, a soft one, like a light switch. My bedroom window suddenly brightened. I got out of bed, walked toward it, and looked outside. My porch light was burning. I hadn't turned it on. Standing underneath it was the old man. And this time, he wasn't smiling. He raised one hand, pointed up toward me, then pointed down the street like he wanted me to come outside. My watch vibrated. 35 lbs remaining. Then another message appeared. Let's begin. And for the first time since I'd met him, I realized something. I'd told that old man I wanted to reach 220 pounds in 6 months, but I'd never asked him what he thought my goal should be. Okay, now let's continue to the second story. Story 2. Missing Margaret. This happened to us in the fall of 2025. My husband and I were both 31, and financially, things had gone pretty well for us. He worked in finance. I worked in pharmaceutical sales. We didn't have kids yet. We'd spent most of our 20s working, saving, and talking about all the things we'd eventually do when we had enough money. One of those things was buying an old house. Not old like built in 1998. I mean, old, tall windows, original wood floors, big front porch, a house where you could walk into a room and immediately tell people had been living there for generations. So when my husband got a job opportunity in a small southern city, we started looking. That's how we found the house on Old River Road. Old River Road ran along the edge of the historic district. It was beautiful. Huge oak trees, old iron fences, brick sidewalks, and 34 historic homes, all protected by the local historical society. Ours had been built in 1871. 2 stories. White columns, tall windows, original staircase, 6 fireplaces, and a front porch that wrapped halfway around the house. The first time we walked through it, I knew, this is it. My husband loved it too. The house needed some work, but nothing we couldn't handle. At least, that's what we thought. We closed in September, and for the first week, everything was perfect. Then one night, my husband called me into the living room. "You need to see this." I walked over. He was standing at the front window. "What?" "Look." There were probably 20 people standing on the sidewalk, outside our house. A man stood in front of them talking. Several people were taking pictures. One woman actually had her phone pointed directly at our upstairs bedroom window. I opened the curtain wider. "What are they doing?" My husband started laughing. "I think we're on a tour." "A tour of what?" He pulled out his phone. A minute later, he found it. Old River Road Ghost Walk. I stared at him. "We bought a haunted house." He laughed. Apparently, nobody had mentioned that during closing. The next night, they came back, different group, same guide, same spot, right outside our house. And the night after that, again. By the end of the week, we'd figured out exactly when they arrived. Usually somewhere around 9:20 p.m., the guide would stop the group, point toward our house, tell some story for about 10 minutes. Then everybody would move along. We couldn't hear everything from inside, but we kept hearing one name, Margaret. Then one evening my husband came into the kitchen and said, "I found her." "Who?" "Margaret." He showed me his phone. Apparently, our house was locally known as the Missing Margaret House. I laughed. "That's wonderful." "You wanted history." "I wanted crown molding. I didn't ask for Missing Margaret." He thought the whole thing was hilarious. I didn't. But honestly, I wasn't scared either. Old towns have ghost stories. Ghost tours make money telling them. That was pretty much how I looked at it. At least, until my watch started acting strange. It happened for the first time about 2 weeks after we moved in. I was upstairs getting ready for bed. My husband was downstairs watching television. I walked out of our bedroom, started down the staircase, and somewhere near the top, my smartwatch vibrated. I looked down. Hard fall detected. I stopped. I hadn't fallen. Hadn't stumbled. Nothing. There was an option asking whether I needed emergency assistance. I dismissed it, then kept walking. When I got downstairs, I told my husband, "My watch thinks I fell." He looked over. "Did you?" "Do I look like I fell?" He laughed. "Maybe Margaret pushed you. Don't start." We forgot about it. 3 nights later, it happened again. Same staircase. Hard fall detected. This time, I paid attention to where I was standing, about 7 steps from the top. I dismissed it again. A few days later, same thing. I started wondering if something about the way I walked down those old stairs was confusing the watch. Maybe the steps were uneven. Maybe my arm moved differently because I held the railing. There were a dozen normal explanations. Then, one night, I wasn't on the staircase. I was sitting on the couch. My husband was beside me. We were watching television. My watch vibrated. Heart fall detected. I showed him. Look. He sat up. You're sitting down. Thank you. No, I mean, how does it think you fell? I don't know. He took my wrist, looked at the screen, then glanced toward the staircase. We both did. Nothing there. But that was the first time. Neither of us made a joke about Margaret. The ghost tour kept coming every night, and eventually, curiosity won. My husband said, we should take it. Take what? The ghost tour. Why? Because I'm tired of strangers knowing more about our house than we do. He had a point. So we bought 2 tickets for the following Wednesday. We didn't tell the company we owned the house. We met the group downtown around 8. There were maybe 15 people. Couples, tourists, a family with teenagers. Our guide introduced himself as Dr. Warren Price. He looked younger than I expected, maybe early 40s. He explained that he taught at the local college and had a PhD in folklore and cultural studies. He also researched paranormal claims connected to historic properties. My husband leaned toward me. Professional ghost guy, I whispered. Behave. Dr. Price took the history seriously. That surprised me. He wasn't jumping out from behind buildings. No fake ghost noises. No cheesy costume. He talked about fires, floods, old businesses, people who had lived in the historic district, and yes, ghost stories. About an hour into the tour, we turned onto Old River Road. I could see our house ahead. My husband squeezed my hand. This is weird. It was. There's something strange about approaching your own house as part of a tour group. Dr. Price stopped everybody on the sidewalk, directly across from our front porch. Then he turned toward us. This house is probably associated with Old River Road's most famous unsolved story. I looked at my husband. Here we go. Dr. Price pointed toward our second floor. In 1948, a 24-year-old woman named Margaret Hale lived here. The group became quiet. Margaret worked as a secretary downtown. According to friends, she'd recently become frightened of a man who had begun following her. Dr. Price explained that Margaret had complained about seeing the same man near her workplace. Then near shops she visited. Then, outside the house. She told friends he'd started leaving notes. Nobody knew exactly what he wanted. Margaret apparently knew his identity, but refused to tell her family. She thought if she ignored him, he'd eventually stop. Then, one Thursday night, Margaret disappeared. Her purse was still in the house. Most of her clothes were still there. Personal belongings, photographs, everything. But Margaret was gone. Police searched. Friends were questioned. Neighbors were interviewed. Nothing. No body was ever recovered. No one was arrested. Eventually, the case went cold. Dr. Price looked toward the house. Over the decades, residents and neighbors began reporting strange activity. Footsteps on the staircase. Sounds from underneath the floor. A woman seen through an upstairs window. And occasionally, a heavy thumping sound late on Thursday nights. Dr. Price smiled slightly. Locals eventually gave her a name. He paused. Missing Margaret. The tour group took pictures. Someone asked if anyone lived in the house now. Dr. Price nodded. It was recently purchased. My husband covered his mouth. I knew he was trying not to laugh. The guide continued. So if you're taking photographs, please be respectful. This is someone's home. I appreciated that. Then the group moved on. The tour lasted another 45 minutes. At the end, people started leaving. My husband and I hung back. Dr. Price was putting something into his bag when my husband said, "You did a pretty good job with our house." Dr. Price looked up. "Excuse me?" I pointed back toward Old River Road. "We're the people who recently purchased the missing Margaret house." His eyes widened. "You're kidding." "No," he laughed. Well, I hope I didn't offend you. Not at all. We talked for several minutes. He asked how we liked the house, whether we'd done any renovations, whether we'd found anything interesting. Then he said, "And I have to ask, any activity?" My husband smiled. "What counts as activity?" "Anything unusual, sounds, cold spots, objects moving, strange photographs, orbs, things you can't immediately explain." I almost said no, then I remembered my watch. This is going to sound stupid. Dr. Price smiled. "Those are usually the interesting ones." I held up my wrist. "My watch keeps saying I've fallen." His expression changed. "Your smartwatch?" "Yeah." "Where?" "Usually on the staircase." He stopped smiling. "How many times?" 3 or 4. "Same place?" "Pretty close." "Where?" "Near the top, maybe the 7th step." He stared at me, then asked, "What time?" "I don't know. Late." "Could you check?" I opened the health history on my phone, found the alerts. The first one, 10:41 p.m. next, 10:43 p.m. another, 10:42 p.m. Dr. Price didn't say anything. My husband asked, "Is that supposed to mean something?" Dr. Price looked back toward the direction of our house. Then he asked me a question that I wasn't expecting. "What did you find in the cellar?" I laughed. "The what?" "The cellar." "We don't have a cellar." Dr. Price stared at me. "Yes, you do." My husband and I looked at each other. "No," he said, "we definitely don't." Dr. Price slowly zipped his bag closed. Then he said, "I think you two need to come by my office tomorrow." "Why?" He looked at me, then at my watch. "Because I've seen the original plans for your house." He paused. "And according to those plans, the entrance to the cellar is directly underneath your staircase." The next morning, my husband and I were sitting in Dr. Price's office at the college. His office looked exactly like you'd expect. Books everywhere. Old photographs. Maps. Boxes filled with historical records. There was even an old Ouija board hanging on the wall. My husband pointed at it. "Please tell me we're not using that." Dr. Price laughed. "No." "Good." He spread a large copy of an old floor plan across his desk. "There," he pointed. I immediately recognized the layout of our house. Front parlor, dining room, kitchen, staircase. Then underneath the stairs, a small doorway. And behind it, a narrow set of steps leading down. Cellar. I stared at it. How big? Originally fairly small, my husband leaned over the plans. "There's nothing there now." "You sure?" "I've walked past that staircase 1,000 times. Dr. Price pointed at another set of documents. At some point, probably during renovations in the 1960s, the entrance disappeared from the floor plans. "Meaning? Someone covered it?" "That didn't necessarily mean anything sinister. Old houses change, rooms get added, doors get removed, closets get covered." Dr. Price made that clear, but then he pulled out something else, a copy of an old newspaper article, "Local woman still missing." Underneath, a photograph of Margaret Hale. It was the first time I'd actually seen her face. She was beautiful, dark hair, big smile, 24 years old. I read the article. Margaret had last been seen on a Thursday evening. A neighbor reported seeing her arrive home shortly after 10. Then, sometime around 10:40 p.m., AMA neighbor heard what she described as several heavy noises from inside the residence. I looked at Dr. Price. "My watch." He nodded. 10:41, 10:43, 10:42. My husband leaned back. "Okay, that's weird," Dr. Price said. "It's interesting." My husband laughed. "That's the college professor way of saying weird." Dr. Price smiled. "Pretty much." Then he became serious. "I want to be clear about something. I don't know what your watch is detecting. I'm not telling you Margaret's ghost is triggering a fall sensor." "Then what are you saying?" "I'm saying there's a cellar underneath your staircase that you didn't know existed, and your watch repeatedly thinks something is falling in approximately the same location, At approximately the same time, a witness reported hearing unexplained noises the night Margaret disappeared. He looked at both of us. "I think that's worth investigating." So did we, because the house was historically protected. We couldn't just go home with a sledgehammer. Dr. Price helped us contact the Historical Society. They sent someone out that afternoon. We showed them the plans. They inspected the area beneath the staircase. At first, nothing. There was decorative wood paneling along the side. It looked original, but it wasn't. The inspector tapped along it, then stopped, tapped again. Hollow. My husband looked at me. I said, "Holy poo-poo." The inspector laughed. "Yeah, there's something back there." They arranged for a preservation contractor to come the following morning. I barely slept that night, and at 10:42 p.m., my watch vibrated. Hard fall detected. I was lying in bed. I woke my husband. He looked at my watch, then toward the bedroom door. We waited. Nothing. Then, thump. From downstairs, my husband sat up. "Did you hear that?" "Yes." Thump. Another one. Then, thump. It wasn't coming from underneath the house. It sounded like it was coming down the staircase, one impact at a time. Thump. Closer. I grabbed my husband's arm. "Don't go out there." I wasn't planning to. The sound reached the bottom, then stopped. My watch vibrated. I looked down. The alert had disappeared. For maybe 30 seconds, the house was completely silent. Then we heard something underneath us. A faint, scratching sound. My husband whispered, "What is that?" I didn't answer. Neither of us left that bedroom until morning. The contractor arrived around 9. Dr. Price came too. So did someone from the Historical Society. They carefully removed part of the decorative paneling. Behind it was a door, small, wooden, painted over so many times you could barely see its outline. There was no handle. The contractor worked around the edge. Eventually, the door opened. A smell came out. Not something horrible, just old, damp dirt, wood, air that hadn't circulated properly in decades. Behind the door, narrow stairs disappeared into darkness. Dr. Price looked at me. "Well, you have a cellar." My husband turned on his phone flashlight. Apparently, the Historical Society representative stopped us from immediately going down. They wanted the space inspected first. Eventually, a contractor went down, then came back up. He said the cellar seemed structurally stable, and there were things down there. "What things?" "Boxes, furniture. Looks like somebody used it for storage," Dr. Price asked. "Anything recent?" The man shook his head. "Nothing down there looks recent." Once they determined it was safe, we went down. I was expecting some giant underground room. It wasn't. The cellar was maybe the size of our dining room. Stone walls, dirt floor, low ceiling, wooden shelves, old glass jars, a broken chair, several boxes that almost collapsed from moisture. Then I saw the suitcase. It was sitting against the far wall. Dark leather, small. One of the straps had broken. Dr. Price crouched beside it. He didn't touch anything. Instead, he took photographs. Then he pointed. There were initials stamped near the handle. "MH." Nobody spoke. Dr. Price said, "We need to stop," my husband asked. "Why?" "Because if that belonged to Margaret, this isn't a paranormal investigation anymore." He stood. "This could be evidence." That changed everything. Police came, then detectives, then people from the county. Our house became a scene of activity for most of the day. The suitcase was removed. Inside, they found women's clothing, photographs, a hairbrush, personal papers, and several letters. The name on some of those papers: Margaret Hale. I remember standing in our kitchen with my husband, watching people carry evidence out of a cellar that we hadn't known existed 24 hours earlier. My husband looked at me. "We bought this house because you liked the windows." "Don't blame the windows," he laughed. I needed that laugh, because things were about to get much worse. The letters were apparently important. Police wouldn't show them to us. But Dr. Price already knew that Margaret had complained about a man bothering her. A few days later, he called. "Can you come to my office?" We went. He had uncovered older documents related to Margaret's disappearance. Statements from friends. Notes from the original investigation. One friend claimed Margaret had been receiving letters from a man for several months. At first, they were flattering, then persistent, then angry. Margaret apparently told her friend. "He thinks because he wants me, I owe him something." Another statement said Margaret had seen him standing across the street from the house late at night. Then Dr. Price showed us a name. Walter Grady, a local businessman, married, almost 20 years older than Margaret. He had apparently become interested in her after meeting her through work. Police questioned him after Margaret disappeared. He denied everything. No evidence connected him to her disappearance. He was released, and Walter Grady lived another 32 years. Never charged, never arrested, never publicly blamed for what happened to Margaret. My husband asked, "Were the letters from him?" Dr. Price said he didn't know. Police were working on that. Then I asked, if they found Margaret's suitcase, why was it hidden in the cellar? Nobody had an answer. Not yet. About a week later, we got another call, this time from the detective. They needed access to the cellar again. During the first search, someone had noticed something unusual about the dirt floor. Near the back wall, the soil didn't match the rest. It had been disturbed at some point. They brought in specialists. My husband and I weren't allowed downstairs. We sat on our front porch. Across the street, a ghost tour arrived. Of all nights, Dr. Price wasn't leading it. Different guide. The group stopped. The guide started telling the story of missing Margaret, while police were literally inside our house investigating her disappearance. I remember thinking how strange that was. For decades, people had stood on that sidewalk telling each other what might have happened. And there we were, maybe finally finding out. About 2 hours later, a detective came outside. He walked toward us, and I knew from his face. My husband stood. The detective said, "We found human remains." I grabbed my husband's hand. Nobody said anything for several seconds. Then I looked toward the house, toward the staircase. And suddenly, every alert on my watch felt different. Hard fall detected. It hadn't been malfunctioning. At least, that's not what I believed anymore. It took time. Months. But eventually, the remains were identified. Margaret Hale, after 77 years. Missing Margaret wasn't missing anymore. Investigators also authenticated several of the letters. Some were connected to Walter Grady. They couldn't reconstruct every detail of what happened that Thursday night. Everyone directly involved was long dead. But the evidence suggested Margaret had been confronted inside the house. There had been some kind of struggle near the staircase. And afterward, her body had been concealed in the cellar. The person responsible had apparently hidden her suitcase and other belongings down there too. Whether Walter Grady acted alone, whether someone helped him, or exactly how Margaret died, we may never know. But for the first time since 1948, her family had an answer. Margaret had never run away. She hadn't abandoned everybody. She'd been inside that house the entire time. And strangely, after they removed her remains, my watch stopped. No more fall alerts. Thursday came. 10:42 p.m. Nothing. Another Thursday. Nothing. The thumping stopped too. My husband finally said, maybe that's all she wanted. What? To be found. I wanted to believe that. And for a while, I did. The ghost tour changed its story. Dr. Price no longer called it the missing Margaret house. Now he'd stop outside and explain how a smartwatch alert eventually helped reopen interest in his 77-year-old disappearance. Sometimes, I'd stand behind the curtain and listen. I actually liked hearing Margaret's story now. She wasn't some spooky woman in an upstairs window anymore. She was a real person. 24 years old. A job, friends, plans, a life somebody took away from her. Then one Thursday night, several months after Margaret was recovered, my husband and I were sitting in the living room. 10:42 p.m. My watch vibrated. We both froze. I slowly looked down. Not hard fall detected. Something different. High heart rate detected. I immediately checked my pulse. My heart rate was normal. My husband asked, "What does it say?" I showed him. Then we heard something upstairs. Step. My husband looked toward the ceiling. Another. Step. Slow. Heavy. Nothing like the sounds we'd heard before. Those had always sounded like somebody falling. These sounded like someone walking. Step. Toward the staircase. My husband stood. I whispered, "Don't. The footsteps stopped, right above us. Then my watch vibrated again. High heart rate detected, and from the top of the staircase, we heard the floorboard creak. That was the moment I realized everybody had spent 77 years asking whether Margaret was still inside that house. Nobody ever asked whether the man who followed her home was still there too. And now to our third and final story. Story 3. Your heart rate is too high. This happened to me in the summer of 2025. At the time, I worked overnight security at a distribution warehouse. And when I say warehouse, I'm talking about one of those buildings that seems to go on forever. Hundreds of thousands of square feet. Rows of pallet racks, loading docks, conveyor systems, break rooms, offices, and long concrete aisles that looked completely different at 3 in the morning than they did during the day. I was 45, married, 2 kids, and I'd been doing security work for almost 12 years, so being alone at night didn't bother me. Honestly, I liked it. My shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 in the morning. Most of my job was boring. Check cameras, walk the building, scan checkpoints, make sure doors were locked, write reports, drink coffee, try not to fall asleep. There were usually a few other people in the building. Maintenance, cleaning crew, sometimes an overnight shipment. But there were sections where I could walk for 20 minutes and never see another person. One of those sections was called Zone 14. Zone 14 was at the far end of the warehouse. It had originally been used for shipping, but after the company expanded, most of it became storage. Old equipment, returned merchandise, empty racks, stuff nobody knew what to do with. I hated walking through there. Not because I thought it was haunted. It was just quiet, too quiet. The rest of the warehouse had machinery running, forklifts, conveyors, fans. Zone 14 didn't. You could hear your own shoes hitting the concrete. That's where my watch started acting strange. I'd owned the Smartwatch for about 3 years. Nothing fancy. I mostly used it for text messages, heart rate, and checking the time. One night, around 3:20 a.m., I.W. Eaton at the security desk. I just finished a round. I wasn't doing anything. Literally sitting in a chair, drinking coffee, watching 6 camera feeds. My watch vibrated. I looked down. High heart rate. Underneath. 128 beats per minute. That surprised me. I felt fine. I wasn't nervous, wasn't exercising, nothing. I put 2 fingers against my neck. My pulse didn't feel fast. Then the watch refreshed. 79 beats per minute. Normal. I figured it had gotten a bad reading. Maybe the band was loose. I tightened it. Forgot about it. 2 nights later, it happened again, except this time, I was walking through Zone 14. I had just scanned one of the checkpoints when my watch vibrated. High heart rate, 141 beats per minute. I stopped. Come on. I checked manually. Within seconds, 76 beats per minute. I laughed. Piece of junk. Then kept walking. 3 nights later, same place, Zone 14. 156 beats per minute. That got my attention. Not because I thought anything supernatural was happening. I thought something might be wrong with me. I told my wife the next morning. She didn't find it funny. You need to get checked. I feel fine. That's what everybody says right before they find out they aren't fine. So, I made an appointment. My doctor checked me. Everything looked normal. I even showed him the readings. He said wearable devices weren't perfect. If I wasn't experiencing symptoms and the readings weren't consistent, it could simply be the sensor. Still, he told me to keep an eye on it. So I did. And that's when I noticed something. It only happened in Zone 14 for the next week. I started paying attention. Security desk, normal. Loading docks, normal. Employee parking lot, normal. Zone 14, high heart rate. At first, I thought maybe something back there was interfering with the watch. Electrical equipment, a wireless signal, something. Then one night, I noticed the number changed depending on where I stood. I entered Zone 14. Watch vibrated. 118 beats per minute. I stopped. Back toward the door. 104 beats per minute. I stepped forward. 121 beats per minute. I stopped again. My actual pulse felt completely normal. I walked farther into the aisle. 133 beats per minute. Another 20 feet. 146 beats per minute. I turned around. Walked backward. 129 beats per minute. I remember standing there thinking, what in the world? Then I did something that seems incredibly stupid now. I started following it. I walked left. 112 beats per minute. Wrong direction. I walked right. 138 beats per minute. Okay. I kept going. 147. 153. 161. My watch had basically turned into one of those hot and cold games kids play. Except instead of someone saying, warmer, my wrist was giving me a heartbeat. The deeper I walked into zone 14, the faster it got. I reached a row of old pallet racks. 169 beats per minute. I walked between them. There were stacks of damaged boxes, old shelving, a broken office chair. Then something caught my eye. An old employee locker. It was pushed against the back wall, half hidden behind several pallets. I'd never noticed it before. Green metal, rust around the bottom, single door, no lock. My watch vibrated. 173 beats per minute. I stepped closer. 181 beats per minute. I stopped. My own heart started beating faster now. Not because of whatever the watch was detecting, because I was getting nervous. I backed away. 164 beats per minute. Forward. 179 beats per minute. Back. 151 beats per minute. Nope. I turned around. Whatever's in that locker can stay in that locker. I walked back toward the main warehouse. The number dropped. Then, 78 BPM. Normal. I finished my shift, went home, and told myself I'd found whatever was interfering with the sensor, some old electronics. Maybe a magnet. Something. Anything. There was just one problem with that explanation. The next night, the heartbeat left the locker. I was sitting at the security desk around 2:45 in the morning. My watch vibrated. High heart rate. 119 beats per minute. I stared at it. I wasn't anywhere near zone 14. I checked my actual pulse. Normal, then 124 beats per minute. I looked at the camera for zone 14. Empty. 131 beats per minute. I stood. The security desk was several hundred feet away from that locker. There was no reason for the watch to be picking up whatever I'd found back there. Then 137 beats per minute. I looked down the hallway outside the security office. Empty. I remember whispering, "Holy poo-poo." The number dropped. 92 BPM. Then 78. Gone. I sat back down. For the rest of that shift, nothing happened. But the following night, it happened again. Security desk. 126 beats per minute. Then 134. Then 141. And each night after that, the numbers seemed to get higher. One night, I noticed something else. It wasn't just getting higher, it was getting closer. I could tell because of the cameras. The first time the alert happened at the security desk. Nothing appeared anywhere. The second time, one of the motion sensors near zone 14 activated. No person on camera. Following night, a sensor halfway between zone 14 and the security office activated. Then another. Closer. I started wondering if somebody was hiding inside the warehouse. That made more sense to me than anything paranormal. Maybe an employee was sneaking around. Maybe someone had gotten inside. So the next time it happened, I watched the cameras. My watch vibrated. High heart rate. 148 beats per minute. Zone 14 camera. Nothing. Camera 13. Nothing. Camera 12. Nothing. Then camera 11. Movement. I leaned toward the monitor. Something crossed between two rows of shelving. Person-shaped. That's the best way I can describe it. I couldn't see a face, couldn't see clothing, just something tall moving through the darkness. I grabbed my radio. "Anybody near zone 11? Another guard answered. "Negative. I've got movement." "Employee? Can't tell." He said he'd meet me there. Two of us searched. Nothing. No employee, no open door, no damaged lock, nobody. I didn't tell him about the watch. Not yet. A few nights later, I was alone at the security desk again. 3:07 a.m. My watch vibrated. High heart rate. 164 beats per minute. I immediately stood. No. 171 beats per minute? I looked at camera 11. Nothing. Camera 10. Nothing. 176 beats per minute. I backed away from the desk. The hallway outside the office was empty. 181 beats per minute. My own heart was pounding now. I could feel it, but the watch was still showing two different readings. My actual reading, 136 beats per minute, and underneath, the unexplained reading, 184 beats per minute. I hadn't seen that before, two readings. At the same time, one was mine. The other wasn't. 187 beats per minute. I backed toward the exit. Holy poo-poo. Then suddenly, the second reading disappeared. The watch displayed, no heart rate detected. Silence. I stopped, looked around. Nothing. I actually started calming down. Maybe it was over. Then I saw the computer monitor. One of the camera screens had gone black. Not turned off. Just black enough that the glass reflected the room behind me. My chair, the desk, the doorway, and someone. A man was standing directly behind my chair. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could see the shape of him. Tall, thin, standing maybe 3 feet behind me. I spun around. Nobody. I backed against the wall, looked underneath the desk like that was somehow going to help. Nothing. Then I looked at the monitor again. Empty reflection. My watch vibrated. My heart rate. 142 beats per minute. Then underneath it, for maybe 2 seconds, another reading appeared. Second heart rate detected, 0 beats per minute. Then it vanished. I didn't finish my shift. I called the other guard, told him I wasn't feeling well, and went home. My wife knew something was wrong the second I walked through the door. I told her everything. Zone 14, the locker, the numbers, the cameras, the reflection. She listened, then said, "You're not going back there tonight." For once, I didn't argue. I called my supervisor, took a personal day. The following afternoon, he called me. He'd reviewed the security footage. He couldn't find the man I'd seen behind me, but he did find the movement I'd reported earlier. And apparently, he found something else. "What's this locker you mentioned?" I sat up. "What?" "You wrote something about a locker in your incident notes." I hadn't realized I'd included it. "Old green locker in Zone 14. Long pause, then he said, "We moved the pallets. And there's stuff inside." "What kind of stuff?" Another pause. Then, "Employee stuff." That didn't sound strange. It was an employee locker. Then he said, "The problem is, it doesn't all belong to the same employee." The next day, I went back. Daylight, people everywhere, forklifts moving, warehouse loud and normal. My supervisor showed me what they'd found. An old ID badge, work gloves, a woman's bracelet, several photographs, a wedding ring, a keychain, another employee badge, different names, different years. Some of the items looked decades old. Others, not nearly as old. My supervisor picked up one of the badges. "I know this guy." "You do? Worked here before I did." "What happened to him?" He shrugged. "Quit, I think." Then an older maintenance employee walked past. He saw the locker and stopped. He didn't say anything. My supervisor noticed. "You recognize it?" The man stared at the locker, then at us. "Where'd you find that?" "Zone 14. His face changed. "That was Granger's." "Who's Granger?" The maintenance employee looked back toward Zone 14, then said, "Night supervisor?" "When?" "Long time ago." He lowered his voice. "Before your time," I asked. "What happened to him?" The man hesitated, then said, "Nobody knows." Apparently, Granger had worked nights at that warehouse for years, and people didn't like him, especially employees who worked alone. He had a habit of following people, watching them from the end of aisles, standing behind them while they worked, showing up without anybody hearing him approach. Several employees complained. Then one night, Granger disappeared. Didn't resign. Didn't collect his belongings. Didn't come back. Nobody knew where he went. My supervisor pointed toward the locker. Why does he have other employees' stuff? The maintenance worker stared at it. I don't know. Then he looked at me and asked, why were you digging around his locker? I didn't answer. Because I hadn't been looking for Granger. I hadn't even known Granger existed. Something on my wrist had led me straight to him. I didn't tell the maintenance guy that. I didn't tell my supervisor either. I just stood there, looking at that old green locker. The maintenance guy finally asked, you said you found it behind those pallets? Yeah. He shook his head. That doesn't make sense. Why? Because that locker wasn't back there. My supervisor looked at him. What do you mean? I mean, Granger's locker used to be in the old employee changing area. Where was that? He pointed across the warehouse. Other side of the building. I looked toward Zone 14. So, how'd it get over here? He shrugged. Somebody must have moved it. When? Couldn't tell you. Then he looked inside the locker again. He didn't touch anything. Most people didn't like Granger. What was wrong with him? The maintenance guy thought for a second. He watched people. My supervisor laughed slightly. He was a supervisor. No. The older man shook his head. I don't mean watching people work. He looked at me. He just... watch you. That sounded familiar. Sometimes you'd turn around and he'd be standing at the end of an aisle. He pointed down one of the long warehouse rows. Just standing there. Why? Nobody knew. Did anybody ever confront him? All the time. What would he say? The maintenance guy shrugged. Usually nothing. Then he told us something I didn't know. Several employees had complained that personal belongings disappeared while Granger was working nights. Nothing expensive. A photograph. Keys, jewelry, an employee badge. Little things. Nobody ever proved Granger took them, but people suspected him. I looked inside the locker. The bracelet, wedding ring, keychain, photographs, employee badges, my supervisor said. So these might be the missing items. Maybe, I asked. What happened when Granger disappeared? The maintenance guy looked at me. Nothing. What do you mean, nothing? He came to work one night and never came back? Did he leave during his shift? Nobody knew. His car? Still in the parking lot the next morning. That gave me chills. What happened to it? Eventually his family took it. Police searched the warehouse. Of course. And? Nothing. No Granger. No evidence of an accident. No explanation. He simply disappeared during an overnight shift. I asked the question I wasn't sure I wanted answered. When did this happen? The maintenance guy thought about it. Summer of 2009. Then he pointed toward Zone 14. Back when that section still ran overnight. I looked down at my smartwatch. Normal. 74 beats per minute. For some reason, that made me feel better. Then the screen changed. High heart rate detected. 112 beats per minute. I stopped breathing. My supervisor noticed. You okay? The number increased. 119 BPM. I looked toward Zone 14, middle of the afternoon. People everywhere, forklift moving through the main aisle. Employees talking, bright overhead lights. 127 beats per minute. No. I started backing away. My supervisor asked. What? I held up my wrist. 136 beats per minute. The maintenance guy stared at the watch. Then, he looked toward Zone 14. His face changed. What? I asked. He didn't answer. What's wrong? He pointed. Far down the aisle, between two pallet racks. A man was standing there, too far away to see his face, but I could see enough. Tall, thin, not moving, just watching us. My watch vibrated. 148 beats per minute. I looked at my supervisor. You see him? Yeah. My supervisor stepped into the aisle. Hey! The man didn't move. Can I help you? Nothing. My supervisor started walking toward him. The maintenance guy grabbed his arm. Don't. My supervisor looked at him. Why? The maintenance guy didn't answer. When I looked back down the aisle, the man was gone. My watch, 76 beats per minute. Normal. I left. I gave my notice that afternoon. My supervisor tried to talk me out of it. Better shift, different section, days instead of nights. I didn't care. I'd spent 12 years working security. There were other jobs. I wasn't staying in that warehouse. My wife agreed. Actually, she was relieved. Within about a month, I found another job. Day shift, different company, smaller building, better pay. I should have done it years earlier. And for several months, nothing happened. My smartwatch worked normally. No unexplained readings, no second heartbeat, no Granger. Eventually, I started wondering if I'd connected things that weren't actually connected. Maybe the watch really had malfunctioned. Maybe the man on the camera was an employee. Maybe the reflection had been some strange combination of shadows. Maybe the guy we saw in Zone 14 that afternoon had simply walked away. The old locker was strange, but warehouses accumulate strange things. I could explain almost everything if I tried hard enough. And I wanted to. Because the alternative was admitting that something in Zone 14 had somehow been producing a heartbeat, and that heartbeat seemed to know where I was. About 6 months after I quit, my wife and I went out for lunch. Saturday afternoon. Busy restaurant, bright daylight, families everywhere, completely ordinary. We were sitting in a booth waiting for our food when my watch vibrated. I looked down. High heart rate detected. I froze. 118 beats per minute. My wife noticed immediately. What? I didn't answer. 124 beats per minute. She looked at the watch. Is that yours? I put 2 fingers against my neck. My pulse felt normal. Then the watch displayed both readings. Your heart rate, 76 beats per minute. Underneath, second heart rate detected, 131 beats per minute. I stood. My wife whispered, No. 139 beats per minute. I looked around the restaurant. Nothing. Waitress carrying drinks. Kid coloring at a table. Older couple eating lunch. 147 beats per minute. My wife grabbed her purse. Where is it? I don't know. 156 beats per minute. I remembered Zone 14. The closer I got to that locker, the higher the number climbed. Except now, I wasn't moving. Whatever was producing that second heartbeat was 164 beats per minute. I looked toward the front windows. People walking through the parking lot. Cars pulling in. Nothing unusual. Then, 173 beats per minute, and I saw him. Across the parking lot, a man stood beside a light pole. Tall, thin, dark work pants. Plain shirt. He wasn't looking at the restaurant. He was looking directly at me. My watch vibrated, 181 beats per minute. Holy poo-poo! My wife turned. Is that him? I don't know. The man started walking toward the restaurant. 186 beats per minute. I grabbed my wife's hand. We're leaving. We didn't wait for our food. We went through the side exit near the restrooms. I kept looking at my watch. 190 beats per minute. Then, 194 beats per minute. We reached our car. I unlocked it. My wife got inside. I looked toward the restaurant entrance. The man wasn't there. 181 beats per minute. Then, 163, 141, 119. I got into the car, locked the doors. Then, 78 beats per minute. The second reading disappeared. My wife asked, Did you recognize him? No. Was it Granger? I don't know what Granger looked like. That was true. I'd heard his name. I'd heard stories. But I'd never seen a photograph of him. My wife said, Call your old job. So I did. The maintenance guy still worked there. I asked if he had a photograph of Granger. He didn't, but the company had old employee records. A few days later, he sent me a picture, old employee badge, Raymond Granger. I opened the image, and immediately, I knew. Same thin face, same build, same man I'd seen across the restaurant parking lot. I showed my wife. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. I called the maintenance guy again. That's him. Long silence. What do you mean? The man I've been seeing. He didn't answer. Then I asked, Did you ever figure out why his locker was in Zone 14? No. What happened to the stuff inside? Police took some of it. And Granger? Still missing? I almost hung up. Then the maintenance guy said, "There's something else." What? After you left, we moved the locker. Where? Outside? They didn't want it in the warehouse anymore. It sat near a storage container until somebody could decide what to do with it. Then, one morning, it was gone. Somebody threw it away. No. Then what happened? Nobody knows. Security cameras didn't show anyone removing it. The locker was there one evening, and gone the next morning. I didn't know what to say. Then he asked, "You still wearing that watch?" I looked down at my wrist. "Yeah," he said. "I wouldn't." That night, I took it off. I haven't worn a smartwatch since. I still have one. It's sitting in a drawer at home, battery dead. My wife wanted me to throw it away. Maybe I should. But part of me wanted to keep it, because that watch was the only warning I ever got. Without it, I would have never known something was approaching me in that warehouse. And I definitely wouldn't have known something was approaching me in that restaurant. That's what sticks with me. For years, I thought a smartwatch measured the person wearing it. My steps, my sleep, my heart rate. But in Zone 14, mine started measuring something else. Something that got excited the closer it came to me. Maybe it was Raymond Granger. Maybe Granger disappeared because something happened to him in that warehouse. Or maybe Granger was responsible for things nobody ever discovered, and somehow he's still wandering around looking for people working alone. I don't know. What I do know is that the last time my watch detected that second heartbeat, I wasn't at the warehouse. I wasn't even at work. I was sitting in a crowded restaurant, in the middle of the afternoon, with my wife. And somehow, whatever I'd found in Zone 14 knew exactly where to find me. That's it for tonight, everybody. 3 smartwatches, and 3 things they probably weren't designed to detect. A man who wanted to lose 35 pounds and discovered that sometimes getting help reaching your goal comes with a price. A young couple who bought one of the historic homes on Old River Road only for a fall detection alert to help uncover the truth behind missing Margaret. And a security guard whose smartwatch detected a heartbeat. That didn't belong to him. Maybe that's what makes technology like this a little creepy when you really think about it. We wear these devices everywhere. They know when we're awake, when we're sleeping, where we're walking, how fast our hearts are beating. And most of the time, we never question what they're telling us. But if your smartwatch ever starts counting steps you didn't take, detecting a fall that never happened, or measuring a heartbeat that isn't yours, maybe don't assume it's broken. Because sometimes, the frightening part isn't that your watch made a mistake. It's the possibility that it didn't. So tonight, before you go to sleep, maybe check your watch, check your steps, check your heart rate, and if everything looks normal, good. I'd probably leave it at that. And until next time, keep the fires burning. I'll tell the stories, if you'll stay scared.